Well, the rally continues. Hey everyone, my name is Richard Moglen and welcome back to another Stock Market Outlook video sponsored by MarketSmith. And as always, today we're going to run through the market indexes, talk about some leading stocks, the IBD Big Picture article, a few different sources of sentiment, and finally we'll round things off with the GMI signal. And at the very end, I'll kind of give you my overall take on the current market conditions. So to kick things off, let's dive right in with the NASDAQ composite here. And if at any time you do enjoy my analysis, please go ahead and take the time right now to leave me a like down below. It really helps me out and the channel. And of course, subscribe if you want to see more videos just like this one every single week. So looking at this chart here of the NASDAQ, you can see the super strong trend we've been in basically for the past 6 or 7 days here. We're back above a rising 21, made it above that 50 SMA this week here. And we're slowly and steadily kind of grinding higher towards that 200 SMA. We're back above this 14,000 level, which is pretty key. And I think there's a few kind of really interesting days in here where on this day we closed at the lows, but the next day we were unable to kind of fall through to the downside. And to me, that shows that there's a lot of strength in this market. And even though we might need a few days of consolidation here, ideally, things are starting to really shape up and there's just more opportunities coming in the market every single day with base breakouts and new leaders emerging. So with that said, we still have to deal with this area, these previous highs here, as well as that 200 SMA, but things are heading in the right direction for sure. And right here, this trend on large volume tells me there's a lot of accumulation going on under the surface. So that's pretty much it for the NASDAQ composite. Moving on over to the S&P 500, this looks pretty similar in terms of action, but the overall chart is a little bit stronger. Let me go ahead and close this here. Super strong action off the bottom, just like the NASDAQ composite. Once again, really nice reconfirmation on this day after a very poor close here, and basically a very strong end to the week, breaking above the short-term consolidation pivot. And we're running into this kind of area right here, as well as just the 4,600 level. So once again, I love to see some sideways action that really kind of solidify a bunch of handles that are forming in different charts and set up a lot of setups into the coming weeks. And I love to see us back above that 200 SMA. I think a retest of that area and reconfirmation above that would be excellent. And I love to see that 50 SMA kind of curl up under price, support it. And lastly, it's good to see us sticking above this rising 21 EMA. And during intermediate pullbacks, I love to see that transition over to support. Moving on over to the Russell 2000, the IWM, you can see this is still a little bit choppy, a little bit weaker than the overall mega cap indexes pretty much. And you can see this pivot right here, 209.05 was pretty much resistance. This high, let's go ahead and check that out. That was 208.79. So we didn't quite manage to even touch this here, but we were rejected down. But constructive action to end out last week. And you can see kind of this launching pad setup forming as the moving averages kind of curl up under price. And I want to see that 50 SMA kind of continue to flatten out and start to move up, and to see that 21 EMA keep being support as it has been during this potential higher low forming late this week. But I think this is a very key level to watch, and I'd love to see this really break through that and start to trend higher and manage to get back above that 200 SMA and the bottom of this prior base, which is once again at that kind of 208, 209 level. So this level right here on the IWM, the small caps, is pretty darn significant if you look back in time. Moving on to the IWO, kind of the Russell 2000 growth. This is a pretty similar story. Once again, rejected in this area. You can see we weren't able to push up to that 266.07 pivot, and we're well below the bottom of this space. So still looking at this index, this tells me that the growth in general, the small cap growth, is still struggling and still kind of forming out their bases. But you've got a nice handle forming here. So I love to see this kind of reconfirm to the upside and make its way towards this prior pivot. And once again, we've got those moving averages kind of converging under price. So if we can push off here, that would be a launching pad setup. Lastly, let's take a look at the FFTY, the Innovator IBD 50 ETF. This is a little bit stronger. You can see it broke above this 39.51 pivot. We're still below that 40 level and also below the low of this prior base, which is once again right near that 40. So I want to see us push through that flag and just kind of form a constructive uptrend, making its way back towards these all-time highs and getting back above that 200 SMA. So overall, looking at the indexes, the big cap indexes, and what I mean by that is QQQ, S&P 500, very dominated by those large caps, Apple, Tesla, Nvidia. Those are acting a little bit stronger than those small caps and are a lot closer to all-time highs. But overall, things are rallying strongly. I love to see constructive action from this point, pullbacks into rising moving averages being supported, and reconfirmations of those trends. So as long as that stays the case, I think there will be opportunities going forward with base breakouts. So moving on to some leading names, let's start with Tesla here. Super strong rally continues and really nice action to end out last week. Double inside days right at that 1,000 level. And looking to the left, you can see it made its way above this potential resistance area. Nice breakout through that level. We're above that 50 SMA, that 21 EMA. And once again, I love to see that kind of curl up under price and support it under that 1,000 level, and then reconfirmation to the upside, breaking through this kind of area. But definitely constructive action and super powerful off the bottom on really nice volume. Definitely signs of accumulation here within this kind of stage 1 base, because we did undercut this prior base. And you've still got great growth here, great quarterly numbers as well, and strong fund ownership. So definitely not going to count Tesla out, and it's showing really constructive action and is definitely a liquid leader to keep an eye on. Speaking of liquid leaders, let's bring up NVIDIA. And this is super strong within that semi space. You had a really nice reconfirmation through this pivot, as well as this kind of area 269.25 here. Nice inside day. I'm not quite sure this was inside. Let's see if it took out that high. Looks like it did just barely, but pretty much in the spirit of an inside day here to end out this week. And you can see this was on lower volume. Some overall very constructive. And I love to see this kind of base out, reconfirm, move back towards that 300 level, and make its way towards all-time highs. But once again, we're seeing that curl up under price. All these moving averages, the 21 EMA, 50 SMA, 200 SMA, forming a confluence area. And definitely want to see that trend continue and see us push up off that launching pad setup. Nice growth expected here in terms of this year and the next, and you have decent quarterly numbers as well, and nice push on volume off the bottom. Moving on, let's take a look at SCDG within the solar names, kind of representing here. Nice action through these highs, then kind of choppy in here, and it's right at that prior pivot, so definitely one to watch into next week. You've got a few pivots kind of converging in this area, and definitely within the solar space is kind of the leader in terms of where it is with respect to recent highs. I think this is definitely one to watch within the group if you're interested in these type of names. RUN, another name to watch here, a little bit tighter, but also lower within the base, and you've got a clear pivot right at this area. Moving on, the energy names continue to be super strong. We had RES with a breakout today, really strong action through these highs. COP as well, ExxonMobil, FANG. If you pretty much bring up any energy related chart, it's going to be in a strong uptrend. And let's just take a look at XLE in general. You can see really nice trend above that 21 EMA. So these charts are leading as of the moment and are acting really well. Fertilizers, MOS, also super strong action here. And definitely want to point out CF as well, super strong action above a rising 21 EMA. And these are the leaders in this market as of this moment. Definitely a little bit short-term extended, but managed to stick above that 100 level and make its way pretty much close to that 110. So could use some basing, but very, very strong action here from this name. JMPR, also worth noting here, really nice breakout on this Friday. VCP, nice last contraction right above that 35 level. Also want to bring up BRCC, another kind of coffee related name, broke out near that 17 level. Nice action moving up towards its IPO base. You can see it's having a little bit of trouble with that 20 level, and in my opinion, could use a little bit of basing here, but acting really nicely, and I want to see some reconfirmation through these highs. Also, I meant to do this a little bit earlier, but let's bring up the FANG names here. Apple, super strong off the bottom, just like Tesla, forming a stage 3 double bottom base. Could definitely use some consolidation here. You've got a little bit of a wedge up here, but some good volume coming in, and I want to see a consolidation handle right below this prior pivot, and then a nice breakout on volume. That would be the best possible scenario. Moving on to Amazon, this is also strong up the right-hand side. We managed to break above this pivot and close above it for the week, and we've got a consolidation pivot right here, right under that 200 SMA, and we're kind of above that bottom of that prior base, which is definitely a good sign. Bringing up Netflix, this is among the weaker of the bunch. You can see it's got a pivot right here, but you can see it's below that declining 50 SMA. Got a lot of overhead supply here. It's not really super high up on my radar. Google as well. Let's bring up that chart. A little bit stronger here. You can see it finished the week strongly above a rising 21, 50, and 200 SMA now. And lastly, let's talk about Facebook. Another one that's a little bit weaker, but had some decent action in the past 2 weeks. But once again, has a lot of overhead supply to deal with, as well as that declining 50 SMA. So not really focused on this one. I think there's a lot of better opportunities out there. Also bringing up Bros. This is a name that a lot of people are watching here. Broke this kind of area a little bit, but so far is being supported by that 21 EMA, but I want to see it kind of recover here and kind of base for a while, for a few weeks here below 60. And then maybe we can finally get a push through this 63.20 area, which it did have problems with. You can see this downside reversal here. SG, another name I was watching here. You can see we had a failure here, pull back to the 21 EMA here, and now this prior pivot, and not a great close to the week, but we are above a rising 21 EMA. So a little bit weak relative to the market. You can see the market's taken off. This is pulling back, but still one I think to have on your radar. I really like the fund ownership in this name, but ultimately it's all about the price strength that matters. And this is a little bit volatile at this moment, so there are potentially better opportunities out there. But overall, that's a brief run through of some names that I'm watching here. Definitely a lot of opportunities shaping up. So let me know what you're watching down below in the comment section. And if you haven't yet, go ahead and hit that like button. I'd really appreciate it. Moving on to sentiment, let's start with my Twitter surveys here. And we saw an increase from 34.3% bullish, now 41.4%. That's kind of, I think, expected because of the strong action late last week. Moving on to the name exposure index, we saw an increase here, but still pretty low here in the low 50s here. So that's a good sign. Looking at the psychological indicators here from IBD, Bulls versus Bears poll is still, you can see with the Bears leading, but maybe we'll get across back above here, but this is also relatively low. So once again, climbing a wall of worry. Lastly, let's take a look at the put-call ratio, and this had a very significant drop. I would have liked to see this kind of stick above here and chop around, but this is telling you that people once again are getting pretty bullish. So that's pretty much it for sentiment. Let's move on to the IBD big picture article. The headline is mid-cap stocks lead in mixed session. Can the uptrend pass these 5 tests? Reading through, discuss the action on this Friday. And also they answer a question that I think a lot of people, especially more fundamentally minded people, are asking: how in the midst of an international conflict can the market be rallying so hard? And that's because the market always discounts today's news, and it kind of thinks 6 to 12 months ahead. So keep that in mind and follow price above all else. Lastly, discuss kind of 5 big tests to watch here. You can read through that for yourself. And overall, their current outlook is still a confirmed uptrend. And lastly, we've got the wishing well GMI signal, which is now green. So that's flipped to the positive. So that's definitely a good sign. And the GMI score on Thursday was a 5 out of 6. And we've got a highlight of MP here. Definitely another name to watch. Really nice longer term base here. And they have a base within that overall base and really strong action from this point. So overall, my current outlook, like IBD, is a confirmed uptrend. I think it's 100% fine to be putting on trades here, managing risk along the way, and seeing basically how feedback from the market comes back. Whether it's positive, you can put on more positions or put on more size. And if you're still having trouble positioning, maybe scale back a little bit and wait for those handles to form and better opportunities, better spots where you can manage risk. So with that, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please go ahead and leave a like down below and subscribe if you're new to the channel, and let me know your thoughts on the market down below in the comment section. I definitely want to hear your take. So with that said, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys in future videos. Peace.